There will be arguments such as whether or not God exists, human beings can live a good moral life. And based on what? Based on a person's well-being. Sam Harris, one of the four horsemen of atheism, new atheism.
Yeah.
So the one of the biggest criticism that the new atheism received was that they removed the value of religion and yet did not bring anything alternative for that. But at least for Sam Harris' critique, his work on the moral landscape somehow tries to answer to the question that even in the absence of God, human beings can live a good moral life. Like how? Based on well-being. Let's say you and I, we are a breathing and deciding being, and we are responsible of our actions. Let's say now, because you and I, we share the same attributes of human beings. Now, there are certain things that we commonly share as good or bad. Let's say sleeping you for no reason right now would be bad for you. Likewise, sleeping me for no reason will be bad for me, right? So based on there we share commonality, where which is bad for you, which is also bad for me. Now together we come into agreement that well, because this is bad for you and this is bad for me, and so this will be made it as bad and doing that will be made it as good. You know, slapping you for no reason will be bad, whereas slapping me for no reason will also be bad. So we share that commonality there. So there we do not need any religious teaching or religious emphasis to say or decide what is good and what is really bad. Because purely based on human well-being, we can decide and live a productive and a good life. That is like one side of the argument. If we really need moral laws.
Okay, so before I give my ideas, what do you mean by the well-being? Let's say, is it an individual well-being or a social well-being or
Of course, well-being would start with me, with you, right? So you would always prefer what is best for you.
okay, okay,
And I would always prefer what is best for me. Then living a life forward, what is best for you seems to be good for me also. And what is best for me seems to be good for you also. Now then, do we not share a common well-being
okay? I think
where we can live a peaceful life, right? So let's say war is bad for you and war is bad for me. And war is not bad because there are religious emphases that says that war is bad, war is evil, war is a sin. War would be a distraction for anybody with no question. So as much as it is bad for me, it is equally bad and destructive for you. So then do we not share a common thing like without any religious emphasis? So that would be one side of argument, right? So
okay,
that's what I think.
all right. So if I'm not mistaken, I think that arguments that the thing that we can we don't need God or we don't need the moral law to live
Right,
to thrive in society, right?
right.
I think uh, that is coming from an evolutionary perspective, I believe,
Okay.
or in other words, that it could be termed as the herd instinct, the preservation of the society of the self, right?
Yes.
Now, it's true that herd instincts exist,
Right.
right? In a sense, uh, we our actions are maybe sometimes guided by the intention of helping others, preserving the society, doing good, for example, helping the poor, or doing some charitable works. Those are very important aspects, right?
Right.
Those are it helps the society. But when we just dismissively say that we don't need God and that
Yes.
even God aside, we can live a virtuous or just our society can live. I feel like that's a reductionist stance on on this on looking at life
Yeah.
or looking at society
Right.
as a whole. Okay, let me just rephrase it. Okay,
Yeah.
so a person is drowning and and then you're just there, watching the person drowning, right?
Yes.
Now, when you see a person in need like that, then two feelings comes up into your mind. two things, two thoughts,
Yes.
let's say.
Yes.
One of the thought is to help the person in need,
Yes.
to put yourself in danger, right?
Yes.
And one thought is just to ignore and then run away.
Right.
Don't face those dangers because it can kill you, right?
Right.
Right. Now, when you face those two situations, those two feelings,
Yes.
let's say, don't you, okay, don't you come across the third feeling, which tells you to, choose the harder ones, the harder of the two,
Okay.
like to help the
in
person,
making
because
the
that is much more moral than that's much more, that's a better thing to do than running away,
Yes, in making
right?
the decision, right?
In making the decision, right?
Yes.
Now, see, you have two decisions.
Yes.
You can either help the person or run away.
Right.
But there's one, let's say conscience of feeling. How would you put it? There's another thing, another element which is telling you to do the harder stuff, the harder work.
Yes.
Now that element, that feeling, cannot be part of the two. For another example could be, see,
No, I totally understand what
you got me right.
Yeah, I
So
totally
just
understand your.
just to another example could be, you're playing a music, you're a pianist, let's say, right?
Yes.
You have a there's a the note on your piano, above your piano. You have the piano note, right? The musical notes,
Yes.
and then you're playing the piano.
Right.
And then now, see, that musical note is a guideline for you to play certain notes at a particular time, right? That
Yes,
note
yes.
is a guide for you.
Right.
And then you're playing the piano.
Right.
Now, playing the piano, and then when even though the note is there, you have the freedom to press the wrong keys at the wrong time, and then play around with the keys, right? Not necessarily
Yes.
for that note.
Yes.
Now that note cannot be part of the keys.
Yes.
That note is a totally different thing besides, apart from the
But
keys, right?
no,
Now, okay,
the note directs you
uh-huh.
to press which key.
That's what.
Yeah.
That's my point. Is okay. Let me
Yes.
just conclude it. Okay. So even though you have the freedom to ignore the notes, right?
Yes.
And just play any keys randomly,
Yeah.
the note is telling you should play this key at the right time, at this particular time, and then at this particular aspect,
Yes.
right? What I'm saying is that there is a different, a third feeling in every situations we face. A third
Yes.
feeling, which is like, which is not part of the decisions or part of the choices we have, but
Yes.
a different, a different feeling or a different uh, guide directing us to choose the hard,
Yes.
the better ones, right?
Yes.
So moral law is so C.S. Lewis would define moral law as the standard of behavior which man ought to follow, right?
Yes.
Now, see, okay, not like, let me just
No, wait. I'm sorry to cut you
okay,
there,
okay.
but those analogies that you brought in and saying that human beings have freedom to do certain things, but let's say at the back of our head there is always an emphasis on which to choose better, right? Like, so now a man is drowning. Now you have a choice whether help the person or not help the person, but there is another some kind of force that emphasizes you to pick the to make the tougher choice. But none of those explain whether or not God exists or morality directs towards the existence of God.
See, we are organisms on this planet.
Yes.
We're bound by so many laws.
Yes.
We have the laws of heredity, we have the laws of gravity,
Yes.
laws of biology, and so on, right?
Yes.
And we share those laws with other objects and organisms and
Right.
materials in the whole of the
Right.
universe, right?
Right.
For example, you cannot disobey the law of gravity. The biological law dictates us to reproduce, to eat, and then to perform those necessary actions which can help us survive, right? Live in life,
Yes.
live our lives. So those rules applies to every good organisms and objects in the universe.
Right.
No objects can remain suspended in the air, right? It
Yes.
falls because of gravity, right?
Yes.
And then the biological laws also. Organisms produce, eat, and then multiply, right?
No.
Like,
Yes. No. I totally get
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, let me
Yeah,
finish.
but
Okay.
I don't see. I don't see any. I don't see the direction where you are really taking.
No,
us
yeah,
to
not
when
yeah,
it
now,
comes
now,
to-
okay, okay. Now I will come into the main points. Those are the laws we share with other creatures, okay?
Right.
But there's a different law called the moral law, right?
Yes.
Moral law, by virtue of being a rational creature,
Yes.
right, with the use of reason,
Yes.
man Men have this, uh, unique, let's say, unique moral law, which we do not share with other creatures.
Right, right.
The moral law is a standard laid out, right?
Okay.
The thing is, the difference between those laws and the moral law is that we cannot disobey those laws,
Yes.
but we can disobey this moral law, right? See, you have mentioned
Right.
something regarding the moral law, that it's a force that tells us to do certain things, right? It's not a
Yes.
force, okay? It's a force. Let's say
Yeah.
it's not a force, but it's kind of a code, a guide to do certain things, the right thing at the right place at the right time, right?
Right.
So this moral law we can disobey. And
Yes.
and the fascinating thing is that other creatures and objects are not bound by this law. Let's say do not have this moral
Right.
code or moral law. Right? Only
Yes.
man have. Right? We cannot trace this law. We cannot trace the origin of this law from any known sources in the universe. Right?
Right.
So will it not be possible that this law originates from something outside of the universe?
No, if at all it does,
Mhm.
then it would always allude to the fact that there will be a moral lawgiver for if at all moral laws exist.
Yeah, I
As
think that's my
no,
point actually.
no,
So
yeah,
yeah, see, now do you agree that there is a moral law?
no. For argument's
Oh,
sake,
okay, okay.
because me as a Christian,
Mhm.
a believer in the existence of God, and strong believer in the living Word of God, why wouldn't I? I would,
Okay.
right? I would have my stand that moral laws does exist and is objective, right? Now the problem here is on the atheistic point of view or skeptical point of view, right? Because I'm using skepticism as a tool to understand things better.
Okay.
That's the thing. So to be skeptical here, so for anything, for us, anything to be decided, right? Now you're saying that for anything to be decided as good, whether to choose as a good thing or a bad thing or a right thing or a wrong thing, has to be a law guiding those actions, right? Guiding those decision makings, right? Then if there is a law that is guiding all of the decision makings, right, in all of the choices, then of course it is obvious that there is a law, right? There is a law, and that could be a moral law, because for morality to guide, there should be a moral law. Then if moral law exists, it will always generally allude to the fact that there is a moral lawgiver. Now it makes a lot of sense. Now my question is, because there are also other point of view where we can say that, see, we don't necessarily need objective moral laws to decide good or to decide bad, right? So as I said,
Okay, that's something. Uh, so you're saying that we don't need the moral law to decide good and bad. Now the question I
no,
would put forward is that if we don't need the moral law,
right,
then uh, okay. So when you're, let's say, okay, if we don't need a moral law,
right.
what is there for you and me to
Yes.
judge that certain actions are bad or good, right? For
Yeah.
example,
No, I'm getting
okay,
it. When
yeah.
it comes
For example, the
to
Holocaust. I mean, if there's no moral law or if there's no standard of behavior
yes,
which will guide mankind, then
yeah,
what is there for you and me to judge that what the Nazis
no,
did during the
no.
Holocaust was
As I said,
wrong,
because
right?
there will be a secular point of view that would justify something like this. Because killing people is paid for you and is paid for me. Like how? Because human life is worth preserving. Why it's worth preserving? Because when you live a life, living is better than dying, right? Because when you die, nothing remains. But when you live, something remains in you. Like good thing comes out of you. So living is better than dying. Right? So in that logic, when we try to justify that, then let's say Holocaust, Second World War, or all the terrible things that occurs, right? That human beings are capable of doing evil. Now, how on what basis can we judge whether this is wrong or this is right, right? How was the work of Hitler wrong, and how is the work of Mother Teresa right? On what basis? Then, on the basis of essay well-being, like
Oh,
for argument's sake, okay, for argument's sake, on the basis of well-being, because killing will be wrong for you, will be wrong for me also. Like, how can it be wrong? because disappearing life is it's not better than living a life, right? So killing will always be better. Killing will always be worse than living. So when that's so, then like, do we really need moral laws?
Okay, I think I get your point.
To really segregate, to understand the idea of good and bad for
Okay.
anybody to decide what is good or what is bad.
So just to make sure that what I'm understanding is true. So what you mean by that statement is that uh, even putting aside the moral law, we can still live, alive. We can still have our well-being. That's what you say, without needing the moral law.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
no. I say like,
Even okay. So even if
so
there,
actually, I'm
okay.
not living by that stand.
I
Yes,
mean, what you're
yeah,
proposing, right?
yeah.
So
My
what you're proposing
question.
is that even if there is no moral law, we can still, survive and thrive as a society. That's what I mean. Is that what you mean?
Yes, because every
Okay.
human beings is striving towards
Okay.
betterment.
Okay. Now, okay, that's a very interesting statement. If that's the case, if there is no moral law, right?
Yeah,
So that would also imply that what the Nazi Hitler and
yeah,
Nazi did,
yes.
where they did it. Actually, they did it, to preserve their genes, right? Their heritage. They
Yes.
eliminated
No, no, no,
millions of the
no.
Jews, and
Yes,
they
I know
believed that
that.
what they think was right?
Yeah.
What they think was right.
Yes.
So since they believe what they think was right, then it's the preservation of their genes and then heritage. They did what like that resulted in the murder of millions, right?
Yeah.
So now, what you're saying, if we take out the moral law and we can still have our like well-being, we can apply this with every society, right?
Yeah.
And we cannot judge those societies, the actions of those societies, like Nazis, like the Nazis during the Holocaust, right?
Yes.
If every society, if there's no moral law,
Yes.
every society would indulge in actions and certain things which will, uh, it's basically the survival of the fittest, you could say. Every society are going to undertake an actions
For its
that
own good.
will preserve their
Yeah.
society, but
Yes.
result in the disastrous consequence for
Yes.
other societies, right?
Right.
So, so what? Okay, so without moral law, what I
Right.
believe is that there will be chaos everywhere, right?
Yes.
So the good thing is that where we can be assured and then just be happy about it, that there is an objective moral law,
Yes.
irrespective of your opinions, the cultures and the country where you live in. There is a standard moral law which guides human society and which helps us to make the correct decisions, and most importantly, which helps us to judge that certain actions of certain individuals or society or countries are wrong or right.
Yes.
Right. So I think moral. We cannot eradicate moral law.
Okay.
Well, okay, living our life without the moral law is a bit short-sighted, I should say, and then
Yes.
reductionist. So that's what I would say.
Okay. Okay. No, no. That's a good way of understanding. If moral law is really a pointer towards the existence of God.